Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. Welcome to A Message to the Oppressed. By the grace and mercy of Allah, tonight my guest is Ahmad Shafiq at Takruri, and this is part 2, Islam versus the Roman Empire. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
By the grace and mercy of Allah, in regards to Islam versus the Roman Empire, today, here it is 1999, and from the 7th century of the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace be upon him, we know that we can't cover that in this show. However, to give not only the Muslims but the people, whether they are Christians, Jews, atheists, agnostic, etc., information for liberation on Islam versus the Roman Empire. First of all, what is Islam? In regards to people who don't know what Islam is.
Well, the literal definition of Islam, the root of it, sin, lam, mean, is peace. And of course, we know that in the Arabic language, we take a root, and by adding various vowels, prefixes, and suffixes, we change the meaning, but it is always a meaning that is related to the root itself. So this sin, lam, mean, peace, you put mu before it, you have Muslim, one who is striving for peace, and so forth.
Now, by the grace and mercy of Allah, in reference to the Roman Empire, at the time of the Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace upon him, what was significant about the Roman Empire, since we live in the Western world, and you made mention in the previous segment, part 1, about the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Empire. How is it, and like with Arabia, what was its relationship with the Roman Empire, if there was any at all, as well as Africa in particular?
The Rasulullah Sallallahu during his lifetime, there were 2 incidents in which the Muslims engaged the Romans. The first being the Battle of Mu'tah. And of course, the Battle of Mu'tah is the battle in which Ja'far ibn Abu Talib, radiallahu anh, was martyred, and several other eminent and great Sahabi. During this Battle of Mu'tah, there were 3,000 Muslims and 30,000 Roman troops. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had appointed an emir over the Muslims and instructed the Muslims that if this emir was martyred, that so-and-so was to be the emir. And if he was martyred, so-and-so was to be the emir. And if he was martyred, so-and-so was to be. Well, in fact, it happened exactly as the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated, and every person that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed as emir was martyred. And it was at this point that Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anh stood up and took leadership of the Muslims and organized them in squares. He wanted them to fight in squares so that no Muslim's back was to the enemy. And from this formation of squares, 3,000 Muslims were able to fight their way through the ranks of 30,000 Romans. A number of heroic deeds went on that day. Ja'far ibn Abu Talib, who we have mentioned already, on this day started a tradition that years later became quite common amongst Muslims in battle. He got down off of his animal and cut the tendons on his animal's horse so that the animal could only run forward. The animal was unable to turn around and retreat. And after cutting the tendons on the animal's legs, he rode straight forward into the Roman ranks, and he slew Romans until such time as he was martyred. Khalid bin Walid, radiallahu an, it was in the Battle of Mu'tah against the Romans that he, in fact, earned the name Saif Allah, the sword of Allah. It was in this battle, fighting against the Romans, that he earned that name. As it is told in the books of Sirah, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting back and was receiving a blow-by-blow account of the battle from the angel Jibril alayhi wasallam.
Meaning, who is the angel Jibril?
Yes.
For those who don't know Arabic.
Gabriel, as it would be said in Christian terminology. And the angel Jibril alayhi wasallam was giving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam a blow-by-blow account. And every time Khalid would break a sword in a Roman's chest, the angel Jibril would tell Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and finally Rasulullah said, by Allah, from this day on he would be known as Saif Allah, sword of Allah. So this was the first encounter on the battlefield that Muslims had with the Romans. The second encounter came as a result of, and this second encounter, the ninth surah, Surah Al-Tawbah, the ninth surah of the Quran, goes into depth about this second encounter that the Muslims had with the Romans. It's called the Tabuk expedition. What had happened was the hypocrites in Medina, since we're primarily speaking to a Muslim audience, Muslims know that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made hijrah to Medina, the people of Medina had just recently come together and elected a king. And so when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made the agreement to come to Medina, part of the agreement would be that he would be in charge of not just spiritual matters, but social, economic, political, that
he would be the head of state.
He would be the head of state and everything else. That what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed was the final word in everything. That Islam was deemed a way of life, not religion as it's understood in the Western world. So, the gentleman who had been selected to be the king in Medina, at this point, if he wanted to maintain any influence in Medina, he had no choice but to accept Islam. And he was referred to as the chief of the hypocrites. Abdullah bin Ubay was his name. He came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam if he could build a masjid outside of Medina, on the pretext that outside, a little ways outside of Medina where he lived, that when the rain came down, it was difficult for them to get to the Prophet's mosque there in Medina, and there was evidently a blind man there who had a hardship getting. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, was aware that there was an ulterior motive, but he gave him permission to build the masjid. And it was from that masjid, the Mosque of the Hypocrites, it's spoken of in Surah Al-Tawbah, that the hypocrites in Medina met and hatched their devious plots. That was one of two places. There was a house of a Jew named Suwailim that they also met in. Now, what happened was they were willing to something that, and this has been from the very beginning the problem in Islam, it's a problem even to today. They were willing to accept Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the final authority in matters spiritual. But their concept was similar to the Western concept of separation of church and state. They did not feel that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam should have authority over social, economic, political, and military affairs. So now, at this masjid, they made the 5 daily prayers, they fasted, the whole 9 yards.
Did everything like a Muslim.
But there was a Christian monk named Abu Amr, and Abdullah bin Ubay wrote a letter to Heraclius, who was the Roman Caesar of the time, and he sent it to Heraclius by way of this Christian monk, Abu Amr. And the letter stated that this man Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he and his forces were growing powerful on the Arabian Peninsula, so powerful that it would not be long before they would be a political and military threat to even the Roman Empire, and that something must be done. And he suggested that to Heraclius that the best way to put an end to that is if the Roman Empire were to attack from without with an army, and that the hypocrites from within be able to do everything they could to help.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Heraclius, having remembered the Battle of Mu'tah, where 3,000 Muslims fought their way through 30,000 Roman troops, he decided that the best thing for him to do was put together an army of 100,000 men. And he made immediate preparations to do just that. However, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had his ear to the ground always. He had an ear in every camp. And as soon as Heraclius began to make preparations, the word got to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah, as soon as he got the word, he called the Muslims together. He went to the masjid, the Prophet's mosque. He mounted the minbar, and he said to the Muslims to prepare that we are about to commence the jihad against the Roman Empire. Now, this is unique because up until this point, the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had been that he would not tell the Muslims who they were going out to wage jihad against. As a matter of fact, when they went out on an expedition against someone, if they were going to go fight someone in a southerly direction, they would leave Medina in a northerly direction and double back around. And the Rasulullah ﷺ didn't reveal until they were all the way out of Medina, out on their mission, just where we're going and who we're going to fight. But he broke with that tradition on this occasion and declared that the jihad against the Roman Empire has begun.
And why was this tradition broke? As a result of the outward opposition and the internal opposition being led by the hypocrites?
Because this was the divinely decreed enemy of Islam and Muslims. It was a jihad that from that point on was going to continue until the day of judgment.
So this was
it
to
was
let the
not a
Muslims
jihad
know.
just as a temporary thing.
So
this was to let the Muslims know that this is it. And
there's no ambiguity.
just like we had the hypocrites during this time now, they went around and they tried to convince people not to go out on this jihad. We've had a couple of bad crops, and this is the first year we had a good crop, and things is ripe now, man. We need to stay here and pick these fruits and stuff. We don't need to go out, don't time to fight nobody. It's too hot this time of year. All kind of excuses that they started whispering in the ranks, trying to cause dissension. As Allah says in the Quran, how the shaitan whispers and withdraws, okay? And so now, but by the same token, just as the hypocrites showed their face on that day, the true believers also stood up and were counted. Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu, it is said that he donated the majority of his wealth towards the Tabuk expedition against the Romans. They said that Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, donated half of his wealth towards the Tabuk expedition against the Romans. Khalid bin Walid equipped a third of the army with weapons and mounts. And the eventual army that went out on the Tabuk expedition was 30,000, meaning that Khalid equipped 10,000
by himself
from his own pocket. Aisha, radiallahu anha, she called the sisters together to her house, and she laid a blanket out on the floor, and she took off her earrings and her bracelets and anklets that were made of gold and threw them down on the blanket and told the sisters. And so the sisters, they donated all of their jewelry and gold and took it to the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to help finance this jihad against the Romans.
So the women were participating.
Oh yes, the women supported the jihad completely. All of the true believers stood up and shone on that day, just like the hypocrites showed their true colors. So now, the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had decided to personally lead this expedition against the Romans. And so they left out of Medina with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the head of the columns. And interestingly enough, the account that's given in the book Hayat al-Sahaba says that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left out, and the lead standard was a flag that read Allahu Akbar. And then behind that, there was the standard for the Hashemites. And they rode together. And then behind that, another tribe bore their standard. And behind that, another tribe bearing their standards. Okay? The tribes formed regiments or whatever we call them, but the tribes fought together as a unit, as one. As they reach the northern borders of the Arabian Peninsula, at this time, the northern tribes of Arabia were Christians. Those who weren't Christians were living on the borders of the Roman Empire and trading with them and sympathetic to them, maybe some even scared of them.
Were the Romans Christians, atheists, agnostic?
Romans were representing Christianity, of course, you know, from the time of Constantine, who made Christianity the official religion of the state that the Romans were representing. Christianity, of course, you know. So when word got to Heraclius that the army of the Muslims was on the border and that they numbered 30,000 with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the head of it himself, he thought and said 3,000 of them walked through 30,000 Roman legionnaires. Now here's 30,000 of them, and they're led by their own prophet. So Heraclius had not had time to get together this army of 100,000 men. They were still in the process of trying to get the people together and the equipment together. Things were in disarray because Rasulullah didn't waste 1 minute. As soon as he found out that Heraclius was preparing to go to battle,
he moved forward.
He moved forward. It was no bam. And they moved out of town the next day. Heraclius was caught completely off guard, and Heraclius thought it the better part of valor to leave. He ran. At that point, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sat down the eminent Sahaba amongst him, and they took shura. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam offered them two choices, and the way he stated it to them was this. He said, Heraclius has fled. Of course, we can pursue him and cut his army down. No problem, inshallah. Or we can wage jihad against the northern Arab tribes and consolidate our power on the Arabian Peninsula so that we control the entire peninsula. Because this is a protracted jihad now, understand. This jihad against the Roman Empire is going to continue until the time of Imam Mahdi. And so it was decided that a better strategy was to consolidate our power on the Arabian Peninsula and take control of that so that the next confrontation with the Romans, we would have control over the entire Arabian Peninsula. And it's for this reason that during the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Islam controlled the entire Arabian Peninsula. Now, a couple of other interesting facts. On the road back to Medina from the Tabuk expedition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayats, they're in Surah Al-Tawbah, to strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites. Now, up until this time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had not given a command to move on the hypocrites, although Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew who they were. And this now, mind you, was the 9th year of Hijrah. We're moving into the last year of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's mission. He knew that who the hypocrites were. For 9 years he knew where they were and played like he didn't. But on the way back from the Tabuk expedition, since they had decided to solidify control over the Arabian Peninsula, Allah revealed the ayat, strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites. And so on the way back from the Tabuk expedition, they stopped and they pulled down the masjid of the hypocrites and they burned it to the ground. They went to the house of the Jew where they used to meet and they burned his house to the ground. And it's interesting that the Quran says this about that particular masjid. This is from the 9th surah, Surah Al-Tawbah, starting with the 107th verse, and it reads, "And there are those who put up a masjid by way of mischief and infidelity to disunite the believers and in preparation for one who warred against Allah and his apostle aforetime. They will swear indeed that their intention is nothing but good. But Allah doth declare that they are certainly liars and never stand forth therein. There is a masjid whose foundation was laid from the first day on piety. It is more worthy of thy standing forth for prayer therein. In it are men who love to be purified, and Allah loveth those who make themselves pure. Which then is best, he that layeth his foundation on piety to Allah and his good pleasure, or he that layeth his foundation on an undermined sand cliff, ready to crumble to pieces, and it doth crumble to pieces with him into the fires of hell, and Allah guideth not people that do wrong. The foundation of those who so build is never free from suspicion and shakiness in their hearts, until their hearts are cut to pieces, and Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. Sadaqa Allahu Azim. Now, one point I would like to make here is that here we have a masjid that has been standing for 9 years. 5 daily salats have been made in this masjid every day for 5 years. Eids have been there, you name it.
But everything
The
was
Muslims
undercover.
that were there did not teach any heretical doctrines.
But they profess belief.
But the one problem is that they did not accept Islam as a deen, as a way of life. It was a religion to them.
Excuse me, Brother Shafiq. Inshallah, since this is part 2 and we're dealing with your compilation of text, inshallah, we're going to have to bring you back for part 3 and 4. And by the grace and mercy of Allah, I pray that Allah bless you, inshallah, to continue to be able to disseminate this information for liberation. And inshallah, we're going to carry this on again, part 3 and part 4.
Ameen.
Alhamdulillah. By the grace and mercy of Allah, we want to thank you for tuning in to our Message to the Oppressed, part 2 of Islam versus the Roman Empire with our guest, Ahmad Shafiq at Takruri. You can write us, inshallah, at P.O. Box, Al-Hajj Muhammad Abdullah Research Institute at P.O. Box 338, Compton, California, 90221, or call 323-470-4869. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you.